Good morning, everyone. I want to thank everyone for being here, especially our guests who traveled from across the country and flew in for this event. As you can see by the number of guests, I think it's indicative of the interest in this right now, because as soon as we started planning this, we had more and more people reaching out to us wanting to share their stories. We're here today to discuss the energy affordability crisis that is unfolding before us. There's a lot in the news, but this is what people are feeling each and every day, and it is a crisis, unfortunately, created almost entirely by this administration. President Trump said he would cut electricity prices in half, but electricity prices have risen 13% nationwide since he took office just over a year ago. Instead of saving money, hardworking Americans around the country, and certainly in my home state of New Mexico, are wondering how they're even going to keep the lights on and the heat running this year. Simultaneously, energy demand is growing across the country at a rate we have not seen in recent history. Grid Strategies, a power sector consulting firm, predicts that electricity demand will grow 32% by 2030. 32%, just 4 to 5 years from now. But at a time when we need the cheapest electrons on the grid, the president is taking every opportunity to stop electrons from reaching the grid altogether. The bottom line is that the Trump administration is failing the American people, and here's how. First, they have instituted, and this is not well understood by the public, and we need to do a better job articulating it, but they've instituted a de facto ban on new wind and solar projects on federal land, stalling 22 gigawatts, the equivalent of powering 2 New York cities, from coming onto the grid, and 500 projects totaling 116 gigawatts of capacity are at risk of not being built. Right before Christmas, the administration stopped leases for 5 large-scale offshore wind projects, putting thousands of people out of work. Like literally, sorry, you don't need to show up for work tomorrow. These projects would have provided almost 6 gigawatts of needed electricity to power over 2.5 million homes. For perspective, that's like taking 6 nuclear power plants off the grid. These actions mean that more than half of all new power planned for construction in the United States through 2030 may not come online. Second, they're raising residential gas prices by wholesale green lighting of liquefied natural gas exports. Under President Trump, the Department of Energy has authorized more than 13.8 billion cubic feet every day of LNG exports, more than the volume exported today by the world's second largest LNG supplier. And this is a simple story of supply and demand. With such enormous LNG exports, there is less supply available to the U.S. Between Q1 of 2022 and Q3 of 2025, residential gas prices more than doubled. And third, the Trump administration is forcing old, broken-down coal plants that were supposed to retire to keep operating under the guise of reliability. As of today, the administration has delayed the retirement of at least 6 fossil-fueled units from retirement, and if the administration keeps preventing these expensive plants from closing, it will actually cost Americans an additional $6 billion a year. One of these is the 63-year-old J.H. Campbell coal-fired power plant in Michigan. Scheduled for retirement, the Trump administration has ordered the plant to stay open. Consumers Energy reports that keeping the plant running for just 5 months will cost at least $80 million, more than $600,000 a day. This is in addition to the investments that consumers have already made to replace the power that the plant generated after Consumers Energy and local regulators found that replacing the plant with natural gas, solar, and battery resources could save customers $600 million. The bottom line is this: they're choosing to keep very expensive coal plants on the grid, and consumers are getting charged twice. Once for the investments in more affordable energy sources that they've already paid for, and again in the expensive maintenance fees to keep Campbell plant open unnecessarily. Overall, grid strategies found that forcing aging coal-fired plants to stay open could add nearly $6 billion in cost to the U.S. consumer by the end of 2028. There are better, more affordable ways to make our grid more efficient, less expensive, and ensure that we have the power we need. Today, we have an esteemed panel of guests who are going to lay out exactly how President Trump's failures are hurting everyday Americans and what can be done to drive down electricity prices. Mark Wolf is an energy economist and executive director of the National Energy Assistance Directors Association, which represents states administering federal energy assistance programs. And Mark will talk about why this unfolding energy affordability crisis is unlike anything he has seen in the past. Mayor Sean Patterson Howard is the mayor of Mount Vernon, New York, and the mayor will discuss strains on municipal budgets, as well as new programs helping residents access cleaner, more affordable heating and cooling. Patrick Crowley is the president of the Rhode Island AFL-CIO, which represents 80,000 working Rhode Islanders. Patrick will discuss what the offshore wind stop work orders mean for the thousands of skilled union members actually building those projects. Alfonso Martinez is the business manager of IBEW Local 611, based in New Mexico. Alfonso will discuss how a lack of project certainty in the energy sector makes it difficult to plan future workforce needs, delaying the construction of clean energy infrastructure needed to meet load growth. Scott Libby is the owner of Royal River Heat Pumps in Maine and has 40 years of HVAC experience. Scott will talk about how high-performance heat pump technology is saving households money, but how the administration's actions, including imposing higher tariffs on essential materials like copper, steel, and aluminum, are disrupting supply chains and driving up the cost of electricity. Ari Matusiak is the founder and CEO of Rewiring America. Ari will discuss new analysis showing how home energy upgrades are the most powerful and immediate solutions to lower energy bills while meeting growing electricity demand. And finally, Paula Glover is the president of the Alliance to Save Energy, a bipartisan coalition of utilities and companies such as Google and DuPont. Paula will discuss how energy efficiency through demand response can lower energy costs. I hope the conversation today will provide us with a better understanding of the scope of the crisis before us and what we can do to bring Americans relief. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first guest, Mr. Mark Wolf. Okay, you're coming back. Great, super. Hit the button and test that one more time.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, there you go. Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And of course, I'd like to thank all the members on the panel for your strong support of the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program. It was a tough year this year. You know, the administration wanted to kill the program. And remarkably, we're on target with similar funding from last year. The administration provided advanced funding at the same level in prior years. It was a remarkable outcome. My name is Mark Wolf. I work directly with energy assistance directors in every state. And what we're seeing is unprecedented hardship as electricity and natural gas prices continue to rise faster than inflation, putting more families at risk of falling behind on their utility bills and facing the shutoff of service. Today, 1 in 6 households is behind on utility bills, owing utilities about $23 billion in total. Our organization estimates up to 4 million households face utility shutoffs in 2025, nearly 500,000 more than in 2024. Low and moderate income families now spend 6 to 10% of their income on energy, 3 to 5 times the share paid by higher income households. When energy costs rise, families are forced to choose between keeping the lights on, buying groceries, paying rent, or filling prescriptions. This winter follows one of the most expensive summers on record for home cooling, driven by rising electric prices and hotter temperatures. Meanwhile, President Trump is weakening the safety net. The Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program funding has fallen by more than a third since 2023, reaching only 17% of eligible households, even as the need continues to grow. The administration has repeatedly threatened LAHEAP, firing all federal LIHEAP staff at HHS on April 1st, proposing to eliminate the program's funding in fiscal year 2026. Unfortunately, Congress rejected that recommendation. Even though funds were released, major challenges remain. Federal LIHEAP staff have not been rehired, leaving states to operate without federal training or guidance and increasing the risk of future funding delays. The drivers of higher prices are structural and widespread. Electricity prices are rising due to higher financing costs, aging grid infrastructure, growing demand from data centers, and higher natural gas prices. Natural gas prices themselves have surged over the past year, in part because expanding exports increasingly tie U.S. prices to global markets. The current policy mix has benefited fuel producers and large industrial energy users while leaving households more exposed to rising and volatile electricity costs. We urge Congress to strengthen the program. While LIHEAP provides critical assistance, it currently places no requirements on utilities to prevent shutoffs or offer discounted rates, even as it now delivers roughly $4 billion a year that helps offset bad debt and reduce collection pressures and keep people connected to the utility system. We also urge Congress to expand weatherization and energy efficiency investments and ensure meaningful affordability protections are included when utilities seek rate increases. America can modernize its energy system and move towards cleaner power without forcing families to choose between heat, food, rent, and medicine. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us to come and speak before you and being partners in this fight. My name is Shawn Patterson Howard, and I'm the mayor of Mount Vernon, New York. Mount Vernon is a first-tier suburb nestled between the Bronx, Pelham, and Yonkers. We're the second most densely populated city in New York State. And whether on a fixed income or a working family, our residents deserve predictable and affordable energy. Energy costs are devastating families. Electricity and gas prices in Westchester are amongst the highest in the nation. Ms. Pettiford, one of our long-term residents, recently faced an $1,100 utility bill. Her actual usage charges were under $350, but delivery charges exceeded $775. Families like hers are forced to make impossible choices between staying warm, putting food on the table, or maintaining their homes. And this is not just a household challenge, it's a community-wide crisis. This crisis also affects municipal budgets. And when energy costs are unpredictable, we must hold back funds for youth, seniors, education, and public safety initiatives. I recently joined a consortium of 40 municipalities across Westchester to challenge Con Edison's proposed rate increases of up to 13% for electricity and 18% for gas over 3 years. We were able to negotiate a settlement of 2.8% and 2% annual increases, still above inflation. But now the revenue must be reinvested into infrastructure and operations in our county. Mount Vernon is taking bold local action. We're partnering with ICER, a local manufacturer, and environmental leaders of color to expand energy-efficient heat pump installation and train a local workforce to support these projects. We are collaborating with Con Edison to create a geothermal network that will deliver efficient heating and cooling to thousands of homes and businesses, not just one customer at a time. And we're working with BERT and Royal Power Energy. We're advancing plug-level electricity management and cleaner energy generation. Together, these programs create a full-stack energy efficiency model from the grid to the plug. We're reducing waste, cutting costs, and protecting the environment. Unfortunately, spiking energy costs force impossible choices, and every dollar saved on stable energy costs is a dollar that keeps food on the table, supports local businesses, saves for a child's education, or invests in a home. Energy price stability isn't just a utility issue. It ripples throughout our local economy and strengthens families. And so I urge you to please act. Support common sense, clean energy solutions that protect families, strengthen communities, and reduce reliance on fossil fuels. By backing these initiatives, you can help families not just cover utilities, but feed their families, plan for the future, all while promising affordable energy and reducing harmful emissions. Energy stability isn't just a utility issue. It's an economic, public health, and moral imperative. Thank you for your time and leadership, and we look forward to supporting your efforts.
Thank you, Mayor. Patrick Crowley.
Thank you, Ranking Member Heinrich, members of the committee, especially my two senators from the great state of Rhode Island, Senator Jack Reed and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. My name is Patrick Crowley. I'm the president of the Rhode Island AFL-CIO and co-chair of Climate Jobs Rhode Island. I represent 80,000 working-class Rhode Islanders, including many of whom have been hurt by federal actions against job-creating clean energy projects like the 704-megawatt Revolution Wind. While I'm happy to say my members are back to work, I'm afraid the damage has been done. Working-class families in Rhode Island are struggling with expensive and rising energy bills as demand increases. And too many Rhode Islanders, too many Americans, are still struggling to make a good living and support our families as costs skyrocket. The Rhode Island labor movement is leading on solutions to these intertwined issues. For the past 10 years, we've worked to bring offshore wind to the Northeast. It's a domestic source of new energy to meet rising demand, and it's bringing thousands of high-quality union jobs to the communities where my members live and work. That should be uncontroversial. Yet, the Trump administration has issued not one, but 2 stop work orders on Revolution Wind, a project that's ready to power 350,000 houses and was 85% done. Losing Revolution Wind and the other offshore wind projects would be devastating to our grid and energy prices. ISO New England, our regional grid operator, issued a statement at the first shutdown of Revolution Wind saying that, quote, delaying this project will increase risk to grid stability. Losing Revolution Wind for good would be devastating to workers who are counting on offshore wind for good jobs to support their families. Workers like Caden Pimentel and Antonio Gianfrancesco, members of Laborers Local 271. Nick Reynolds, who paints and coats turbines as a member of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. Tom Kilday, an apprentice electrician with IBEW Local 99, who has been working on Revolution Wind for the past year, and when asked about the shutdown said, quote, it's like running a marathon and getting tripped 100 feet from the finish line. If I can offer you one takeaway for you to consider today, it would be this. We can build a resilient economy. We can make energy affordable. We can do it while we create good jobs, and the labor movement is ready to lead the charge. Let us finish the job. We need your help to make this a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Alfonso Martinez, welcome.
Good morning, Ranking Member Heinrich, esteemed senators, and fellow panelists. My name is Alfonso Martinez, Jr., Business Manager and Financial Secretary of the IBEW Local Union 611. We have roughly about 3,000 members. Most of those members, they know me as Fonz. I'm a proud 33-year member of the IBEW, and my position in the union and therefore the energy industry have been vast. I am both a journeyman lineman and a journeyman wireman, meaning I have built big buildings and operated and maintained big power lines and built big power lines. I have the frontline experience in America's energy industries. IBEW Local Union 611 supported the infrastructure and energy legislation that became law in 2021 and 2022 because for the first time, these laws put members on a level playing field in the renewable energy industry and more broadly invested heavily in modernizing the power grid. The IBEW works on all forms of power generation, but until the IRA, the renewable sector was less union-friendly, to put it mildly. However, thanks to the work of Senator Heinrich and other senators in this room, the IRA made it so it would cost more for developers and project owners not to hire union labor. When the president's big, beautiful bill rolling back clean energy tax credits, and with Trump's administration canceling hundreds of billions in energy projects, the opportunities in these sectors will dry up for union members. Already, my local union has seen the Kit Carson battery storage project in Taos canceled by this administration's Department of Energy, putting over 60 of my members out of work, as well as millions of dollars for the PNM virtual power plant project being frozen for purely political reasons. What this means for our local, on top of putting folks directly out of work, is that a steady pipeline of highly skilled workers can't be built. Without project certainty, we can't bring in and train apprentices. Our model is earn while you learn. If we don't have the work for these apprentices, we can't bring them in. So contracting the pipeline for these jobs reverberates across our industry. The jobs lost and the opportunities lost represent real costs to the IBW, but they will also hurt all families in New Mexico. Killing new generation for no good reason won't stop the big energy users from growing. And we don't want to stop the growth. We want to build to meet that new demand. But if we don't build more generation, the data centers have the money to pay higher taxes. We won't, our neighbors won't. And I'm left asking for what? What are we killing these projects for? With that, I look forward to discussion and to answering your questions, Senators.
Thank you, Florence. Mr. Libby.
Good morning, Senators. Thank you for your work here in Washington and on this committee and for putting together this roundtable, providing this opportunity for us to come speak. I'm Scott Libby. I own Royal River Heat Pumps in Freeport, Maine. We provide and install exclusively heat pumps. This is year number 41 for me in the HVAC trade. I've done gas, oil, and I realize that my customers love heat pumps. They're clean, they're quiet, they're efficient. I've built a company with close to 40 employees, representing 40 families, over 80 children in my company. There are 754 registered vendors in Maine providing heat pumps. With the loss of the tax credit, we've seen the adoption of heat pumps go down. After Maine has led the adoption of heat pumps over the years, Royal River Heat Pumps alone has installed 10,000 heat pumps. We represent a small fraction of the number that are being done in Maine. The number that has been done only represents a very small percentage of what needs to be done. We have seen how these systems have transformed energy use and comfort in homes in the coldest state in the climate. Our customers love them because they're clean, quiet, they improve their indoor air quality, they offer year-round comfort, and in most cases, they save energy cost, especially if you're switching from oil, propane, or electric heat. I've heard families say that this is the first time they've been warm in the winter and not afraid to look for the next electric bill. But we're also seeing affordability pressures, not because the technology is failing, but because of structural issues. Maine's electricity prices are rising, driven largely by natural gas exports that push up wholesale prices across New England. Gas prices are up 60% right there on that chart. It's the largest spike in decades. And like many small business owners, I'm dealing with higher input cost on equipment, copper shortages from data center demand, and rising healthcare premiums. My employees get 100% medical, dental, vision, long-term, short-term disability, and life insurance. I'm seeing those prices skyrocket. But this is not a time to retreat. As we work to reduce electricity costs, we should double down on efficiency and electrification. Maine is showing how. Our state's new energy efficiency plan focuses on weatherization and beneficial electrification to reduce household bills. It invests in market transformation to build momentum, grow the workforce, and drive down installation cost. And it uses smart tools like demand response to spread fixed grid cost more efficiently and lower cost for everyone. If Maine can make it can work anywhere. Let's make sure every household, not just the wealthiest, can afford the benefits of these systems.
Thank you, Mr. Libby. You'll be glad to know I have 2 heat pumps and we burn 0 molecules in our house. So, Mr. Ari Matuska.
Thank you for that, too.
Thank you, Senator Heinrich, for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you, Senators Reed, Whitehouse, Hirono, and Welch for all of your collective leadership on these issues. On my way in this morning, I asked AI a question, which was how much would the tech companies be spending over the next 5 years to procure energy so that it could keep answering questions for me and and all of us. Its response was several $100 billion, maybe $1 trillion, for energy procurement. Not the bills that the data centers will pay for their energy bills, but just to get that electricity. And that makes sense because the procurement that is projected, Senator Heinrich, as you mentioned, is going to be somewhere between 100 to 200 gigawatts to support these data centers all across the country. And these projects are all across the country. That is one of the inputs into the rising electricity rates because we're not building enough new power or bringing it online, and there is more demand on the system for power. And there has been a lot of discussion about this, of course. And one of the solutions that people have proposed is a really good one, which is to not have ratepayers pay for the data centers for the electricity that they need. But the dynamic here is a little more nuanced, because if we say to large loads like data centers that they need to pay their own way, that doesn't lower anybody's bills. It actually just slows the rate of increase. But there's actually a really amazing opportunity in front of us that creates a win-win for all of your constituents and all of our communities. It turns out that 50 to 100% of the energy that these data centers need can be furnished by households by putting rooftop solar, batteries, heat pumps in people's homes, creates enough space on the grid for the electricity that the data centers themselves need. So if the tech companies are going to be spending several $100 billion to $1 trillion to find that energy, they could put a significant percentage of that into an investment into all of us, into households, to purchase these machines to lower their bills immediately. And it turns out that when you install rooftop solar and battery storage and heat pumps in your home, your bills go down. They go down by $1,800 a year on average. $1,800 a year on average that happens right away, not $1,800 a year that might happen 5 or 6 years from now when the grid catches up to all the demand that it's needed. So part of why I'm raising this is that I think this is an opportunity for real federal leadership, and it manifests in 3 ways. One, we need to come back around to the investments that you all led on to help households make these investments in the first place. Senator Heinrich, your rebate program was one of the hallmarks of the legislation that passed several years ago, but only 13 states have those programs active around the country. Those dollars need to be released. Second, there is an opportunity for us to invest in and standardize these virtual power plant programs for households so that we can have those households become a real asset for the grid and for households to get paid for supporting the grid. And the last thing is that these large loads, that are coming on from data centers and others, we can require them to prioritize households as the first place to look for where they go find that energy so that households can benefit, communities can benefit, and they can get their power too. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Glover.
Thank you, Ranking Member Heinrich and the members of the committee. I'm Paula Glover, President of the Alliance to Save Energy. It's an honor to join you today to discuss how we protect affordability for American families and businesses at a moment when the electricity system is under historic pressure. Across the country, utilities are facing rapid load growth driven by data centers, AI, electrification, and new manufacturing. Demand is rising much faster than new generation and transmission can be built, creating a widening gap between near-term needs and long-term infrastructure timelines. And when that gap widens, the cost of new infrastructure often falls on families and small businesses owners, many of whom are already struggling with rising energy bills. The good news is this: rising demand does not have to mean rising electricity prices. Energy efficiency, flexible demand, distributed energy resources, and virtual power plants are real, proven solutions. They can be deployed faster, and at lower cost than traditional infrastructure, serving as a practical bridge while new generation and transmission come online. Energy efficiency protects affordability in two ways. At the system level, it lowers peak demand, helping utilities avoid or defer the most expensive investments that drive rates. At the customer level, it directly reduces energy use and bills, especially through foundational measures like weatherization, which are critical for households with the highest energy burden. At the Alliance, we've been working with utilities, regulators, and large customers on a framework called Bring Your Own Distributed Capacity, or BYODC, because you love a good acronym. The idea is straightforward. When large energy users add load, they help fund incremental efficiency and demand-side resources that deliver real, verifiable capacity for the grid. This approach gives utilities faster capacity relief, strengthens reliability, supports economic growth, and helps protect customers from unnecessary cost increases. Yet today, demand-side solutions remain dramatically underutilized. They're not consistently treated as capacity in planning or interconnection, despite their speed and cost advantages. We don't need a one-size-fits-all mandate, but what we do need is national leadership that helps states and utilities fully use the tools they already have through clear measurement and accreditation, rapid deployment of home energy rebates, and scalable pathways for virtual power plants. And this is a rare moment. The choices we make now can protect families, strengthen reliability, and ensure affordability as demand grows. Demand-side solutions are the fastest path to affordability, the smartest path to reliability, and the most cost-effective way to meet the energy future ahead. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
You want to go first? If you want to jump on right now, I'll let you jump in front of everybody because I know you have to go, Senator Reed.
I will take the privilege, Mr. Ranking Member. Thank you. First, let me thank Senator Heinrich, not just for today, but for his leadership on all of these issues over many, many years. Thank you very much. Great to be with folks I've had the privilege to work with, Alex and Pat Crowley from Rhode Island, and Ari, got a Brown degree or two. Thank you all for being here today. And I just quickly, Pat, can you tell us, again, the impact of the stopping the wind in terms of labor, and also you were sort of teeing up not just to do these wind projects in Rhode Island, but around the country and other energy-saving projects.
Yes, thank you, Senator, for that question. The impact has been pretty dramatic. It's as if the Trump administration has put a closed for business sign on the northeast coast of the United States. I mean, you got to imagine that these projects are not like having two buddies come over on a Saturday afternoon to build a deck on the back of your house. I mean, these are multi-billion-dollar, multi-trade, intricate projects. They take years of planning. And the developers that are interested in this type of project building have opportunities elsewhere around the world. And my biggest concern is that by sowing confusion into this marketplace, these developers are just going to look elsewhere. That's going to leave my members in Rhode Island, out in the cold. But you're right, Senator, this isn't a Rhode Island specific thing. We have a chance to be an energy producer for the entire country, right off the coast of New England. And to think that we'd give up a domestic source of energy that is not only going to be less expensive. I mean, right now, the Revolution Wind Project is a 20-year fixed purchase price agreement at less than 10 cents a kilowatt. Now, by comparison, just the other day, the grid was charging paying 70 cents a kilowatt. So why would we not have a cleaner, cheaper, safer, domestic source of energy that's going to employ thousands upon thousands of union members up and down the East Coast and elsewhere across the country? It just makes no economic sense.
Well, thanks, Pat. Mark, I want to thank you for all the work you've done on LIHEAP.
Thank you.
Thank you. You've kept it on the table at least, and we're going to do our best, working with Senator Collins and others. Ari, just a quick question, very quick. What about rebates to consumers? Is that part of your vision?
Yes, and, Senator Heinrich and you all led on the rebate program in the Inflation Reduction Act, and states like Rhode Island and all around the country have their own rebate programs. This is really important as a way to bring down the front-end cost, and when you combine it with other sources of capital, like, for instance, if we have tech companies supporting those costs to help homeowners make these installations, you can cut the front-end cost by over 60–70%. So it's a really important part of the equation, and we need more of it.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you very much, Heinrich.
Senator Welch.
Thank you all very much. You know, the thing that's so frustrating is that it's like solutions, everything you're proposing is like practical and within reach. And what's the problem? You know, it really is astonishing. We'll get Sheldon and Martin going on their tirade about the fossil fuel companies, but it is, did you say 10 cents?
10 cents, Senator. It's cheap. It's affordable. It drives down costs.
That is amazing. Who'd want that, right? I just want to do a couple of things. Ari, I want to ask you, this idea of having localized demand-side management, which is an asset, it's there, it's built, and you can, pardon me, you can employ that. Just talk, what is the holdback on us doing it? I know it doesn't fit the model of generation. And generally, you know, for years, decades, the power producers, the utilities would be given a return on investment. So the more they invested in big expenditure projects, not the higher rate they'd get, but the higher total gross they would get. And obviously, it's an incentive to not put on rooftop solar. It's an incentive to do a big coal plant or gas plant. So what do you think is the holdback on us being able to take advantage of what is right there in all of our communities?
I think it's a mindset shift. You know, historically, we think about households as the end-of-the-line passive energy consumer. But if we thought about households as energy infrastructure,
Right.
It changes how you approach the problem. And, you know, a large tech company corporation coming to town to build a data center is not going to, you know, knock on your door or mine and say, hey, you know, have you thought about getting a heat pump next
So how
week?
would you implement that?
Right. So this becomes a programmatic strategy where you pull together the utility, a local set of implementers, and the support from the hyperscalers for
Right.
the dollars. But what we're seeing in places like Maine, where Scott has been doing a great job installing a lot of heat pumps, is that when you put a program together and you say, we have a goal, we're going to try to get to 100,000 heat pumps in the state, people rally around that and they get organized. And what's beautiful about this approach is that it allows the whole ecosystem, from the contractors to the local community leaders, to say, oh, we have a target. We have resources to support 20,000 households getting upgrades.
Right.
And then that allows that to start to play through.
Thanks. And Paula, on the energy efficiency, Senator Padilla left, but he was bragging to me about California having reduced the cost of electricity, and it's not the demand, it is the utilization because of efficiency. So again, that's something that can be done on a household or a business level approach. We've got an efficiency utility in Vermont, but just elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think, right, what you're speaking to, Senator, is that the efficiency allows people to install measures in their own homes, apartments, what have you, businesses that will affect them, or, right, enable them to save energy. I think the challenge that we have is that there's some enabling things that need to happen for particular customers. So if you think about the customers that Mark serves, those customers typically have, before you can get to efficiency, you probably have some things that have to do with weatherization, or even before weatherization, right? I have a hole in my roof, I have a faulty, like those kinds of building envelope things. So we've got challenges in terms of how do you support households of various demographics to adopt these kinds of programs. And so the beauty of rebates, tax credits, or weatherization, what have you, is that each of these programs can attack the problem from a different position. And so I think what Rewiring America and what Ari is suggesting is, right, another solution that we have to address this like multi-leveled problem, and depending on the customer that you're dealing with, it's heat pumps, it may be insulation, it may be something else, but at the end of the day, I think it serves two purposes. One, it does reduce the bills of households, right? Efficiency is the thing that makes energy more affordable. But it also then, right, gives us greater capacity in the grid, and that has challenges in terms of how you manage it, but it does create space, and particularly during a time where we know, while we're talking about permitting reform, it's not going to happen tomorrow, and we have a challenge that needs to be addressed tomorrow. And so how do you address this near term, even while you're looking for a longer term solution?
Thank you.
Senator White.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you,
Great.
Senator Heinrich. It's a pleasure working with you, and I'm hoping that we can get back to work on permitting reform soon, when we can get a response from the Trump administration about when their nonsense will end. I'm delighted to welcome Pat Crowley here, who's been such an effective leader against the Trump administration's illegal, irrational, and mean-spirited attack on offshore wind jobs. And I just wanted to raise the question, like, what do we know and how do we know it? We know that renewable energy is less expensive. How do we know that? We know that from sworn pleadings filed in the offshore wind cases by attorneys general alleging hundreds of millions of dollars in customer savings, with sworn affidavits to back up those in-court assertions. We know that from written contracts that bring Revolution Wind electrons at 9.9 cents per kilowatt hour onto an 18-cent per kilowatt hour grid. 9.9 is less than 18. We ought to be able to agree on that. We know that from the technical experts who run the grids, the ISO operators who call up offshore wind, solar, and wind before they call up fossil fuel, because it's cheaper, and that's how the grid works. The technicians know that renewables are cheaper, and we know it from experience. We went and took a look back at Texas, and we took a look at the Texas grid, and there is a level, there are all sorts of levels of demand. And demand is, let me say it this way, supply has gotten much cheaper on the Texas grid as renewables have come online. There's been an explosion in Texas of solar and wind, and as a result of that, at a fixed level of demand, the cost has gone down by 2/3. Thanks, Peter. 2/3 in cost reduction because all of that less expensive power came on. So Peter asked a very good question. This makes no sense. How does this make sense? It makes sense once you understand the political context that we're operating in. It makes sense once you understand that the fossil fuel industry contributed hundreds of millions of dollars to Donald Trump. And that by deliberately hobbling and interfering with and blocking and slowing down cheap, clean energy, they drive grids across the country up the stack to more expensive fossil fuel plants. Those more expensive fossil fuel plants set a higher price for consumers, so consumers have to pay more. And that extra money goes where? It goes to the fuel dealers and the operators of those fossil fuel plants that would otherwise be sitting idle because they're too expensive and inefficient and polluting to run. It is a direct transfer of millions and millions and millions of dollars out of the pockets of ratepayers and customers to the big fossil fuel donors of Trump. It's not just a cost, it's a scheme. And the more people understand that this is being done deliberately, this is on purpose, this is to raise their electric utility costs on purpose so that the extra money can go to Trump's big fossil fuel donors, then they'll be mad about this, and I think they deserve to be mad about this because they're already mad about the cost. And when we understand that there's a corruption element, it gets even worse. So thank all witnesses for being here. Thank you, Martin, for your leadership on the Energy Committee. And back to the next person on the panel.
Senator Hirona,
you're up.
Thank you, Senator Heinrich, and thank all of the panelists for being here to share your experiences and expertise. I think you all pretty much know that Hawaii has among the highest, if not the highest, energy costs in the country because we were basically pretty much 100% reliant on the importation of fossil fuels for electricity. We also have, as a result of the continuing cost of energy in Hawaii, that one of the strongest, I would say, goals for becoming 100% non-reliant on fossil fuels and relying on renewable energy by the year 2045. So this regime's drill baby drill orientation is definitely not helping Hawaii get to its goals, and so we face major challenges. Listening to this panel, though, I was particularly taken with. Sorry, Ari, I can't pronounce your last name. Okay. Is it okay to call you Ari? I was really interested in both you and Paula. We're going to call all of you guys by your first names because we're all friends, aren't we? Interested in the homeowners, the households, and the homeowners as a way for getting a handle on energy costs. And so you talked about households as part of the grid. And I think that in Hawaii, we were trying to get, we have a pretty high level of use of solar in Hawaii, and that helps our electric company and all of that. But I think you mentioned there were some states that really create an environment where households can be part of the energy infrastructure. Can you explain what kind of laws that are in these states, and anybody else who wants to chime in, that results in the households being part of the infrastructure?
Sure.
Then I'll get to
Thank you, Senator Rono. One thing to say is the rules across states are highly variable, right? So in some states, it's easier to put rooftop solar on your house. In other states, it's harder. In some states, it's easy to attach a battery. In some states, it's more difficult. Some states have what are called virtual power plants that enable you to combine a bunch of households together and use that as a way to offset some of the costs on the grid and pay households for doing it. Other states, it doesn't get recognized. I think part of the opportunity here for federal leadership is to create a framework that standardizes this approach and to basically say, instead of thinking about households as passive energy consumers, to think about them as a part of the energy infrastructure. And if we take that seriously, then what will happen is we will think about households as a place of investment for the grid to get access to.
Yes, I like that approach. My question is, how does a state like Hawaii, which is not connected to any other grid, and in fact, each island has its own grid, and we don't share energy that way. How does a state like Hawaii implement the perspective that you're explaining?
So one of the main things to do is to make electricity as cheap as possible. The way to do that is to lower the cost of rooftop solar and storage. In countries like Australia, the cost of solar is less than $1 a watt. In the United States, it can be $4.50 a watt for households. That's not because the technology in Australia is better than the technology here. That's because of all of the costs that we stack on top of that to make it more expensive. And so that's a way that a state like Hawaii and all across the country, we can lead to lower those costs, get soft costs out of the mix, permitting costs, all these other things that add expense for households. And as soon as you make the cost of that electricity cheap for the families, then their bills go down by quite a lot, and the grid becomes more resilient as a result.
Well, I think I'm probably going to want to have my staff talk to you more. Paula, you mentioned that impacting the demand side. How do you encourage households to lower their demand for energy use?
I would say, many of the programs that the One Big Beautiful Bill took away was part of what have encouraged households to do that, right? But I would also say there are lots of things like weatherization, what they do at the state. So our state regulators are allowing utilities to have different types of programs that are in addition to home rebate programs and other things that customers can adopt. All of those things really help customers reduce the cost of their bills. The biggest challenge we have is really information, right? And understanding in a time like this, what we are talking about is investment. And so Ari is right that if you install a heat pump, your bill's gonna go down. But first you have to have the money to install the heat pump. And the rebates were designed to give customers the money to do these things. And so there's a through line through them. And when you get rid of one, you make it more challenging to have the kind of other outcomes that we want.
Well, since the federal government has pretty much eliminated all support for low-income people, LIHEAP, and also the rebate programs, then pretty much it's left to the states to figure things out on how to incentivize the kind of programs that you're talking about. And so I don't know if somebody has a sort of like an explanation of what each state is doing, what states are doing to lower on the demand side. So that would be helpful to learn from what other states are doing.
Well, we could certainly come and come back to you guys, because I think it's a lot of information, and share in more detail what various states are doing. Because some states are doing different things. They have state-level legislation, and don't want to take up all your time.
Yeah, that's what we're going to need to resort to. By the way, I have a heat pump. Okay, thank you.
Senator, if I could just amplify one part of Paula's answer. I mean, one of the things that the big, beautiful bill took away was the Solar for All program, which would have been instrumental for what Ari and Paula are talking about. In Rhode Island's context, 40% of the people in Rhode Island are renters. So they don't have the ability on their own to go put a solar panel on their house. You know, they need to get their landlord to do it. What the Solar for All program, which was sent $40 million to Rhode Island, which would have been specifically targeted at low-income households, marginalized communities, and renters. So those communities needed that program so that they could build that domestic infrastructure that Ari's talking about, so that they could increase the demand side that Paula is talking about. And when the Trump administration unilaterally cut the Solar for All program, and I was talking with some of my colleagues here this morning, you know, there are places, it sounds alien to me being in an urban area like Rhode Island, that simply don't have power in this country. You know, Senator Heinrich, one of the co-plaintiffs is a tribe in your state of New Mexico. I mean, and just to think that we had an opportunity, not just to provide electricity to these folks, but to actually build a power source that we could make demand increase, but create the space to do all of the other things that Ari and Paula were just talking about. I mean, it's counterfactual.
And one thing to add to that, up to recently, people who struggle to pay their energy bills were primarily in the bottom 20% of the income population in the United States. But we're now seeing, and this might be the opportunity to kind of revisit how to move efficiency forward. We're now seeing people who are more moderate income, you know, between 20 and 40% of the income stream struggling to pay their bills. We've never seen those families before. Electricity was affordable for a long time. Between 2015 and 2021, prices pretty much stayed with inflation. It was just affordable. But since 2021, prices have gone up faster than inflation. And I think that's what we're seeing, is that people who could afford their energy bills didn't come in to ask for LIHEAP assistance. You know, people at the top end of eligibility, we never saw because they could afford it. Now we're seeing them, and that's what really worries us, is that the dynamics changing, in that when you look going forward the next couple of years, this isn't like a volatile change, like electricity is going to come down next year. There's enormous pressure to keep prices moving up. And so we're looking at programs like LIHEAP. They're really designed for a different period. And I think that as we go forward thinking about how do we help families, all that needs to be taken into account, as well as, of course, you know, extreme temperatures in the summer. You know, rising electricity prices doesn't just hurt families in the winter. We're now seeing record prices in the summer. So there's almost like an institutional change going on, that the programs we have in place aren't really set up. And then just to add on to the last comment, that what the administration did was pull away programs that would help address those rising prices, just like Solar for All. I mean, luckily, the LIHEAP is still in place. You know, the administration wanted to kill it, but we're still here. But it hasn't kept up with inflation, and I think So the combination of things, just to kind of wrap up my point, is we're really seeing a change. We need a new lens for the next period, that the old lens, I think, is gone. I think the era of cheap energy, cheap electricity, abundant fossil fuels, that's over. And we really do need to think more aggressively about efficiency now and renewables.
Senator King. Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Senator Heinrich. We're talking about so much of what we're doing now. Right now, Congress is considering probably the biggest bipartisan housing support bill ever. And so as we move forward in developing housing, we know that we are 3 to 4 million housing units short here in this country. And as we're moving forward and we're building housing, we really encourage Congress to incentivize LEED certification, to incentivize solar, to incentivize heat pumps, and anything that is going to cause these housing projects to be more energy efficient. This is going to support people at every band of the income range, and it's going to be important. And so while we're working to increase electrification and expand the grid and make it more durable, we also want to make sure that we're building housing for the future that already takes into account rising heat and energy costs, and that we're cutting it off on that end. That is going to be so important as we move forward. Passive housing in Mount Vernon, we built one of the biggest passive housing projects in North America, and it opened in 2023. And I can tell you that the residents who are living in that building are paying 50% less than everyone around them. And while their rents might be higher, their energy costs are lower, and that is stable. People need stabilization. They need predictability. That is going to help. And then it's also going to help governments, because when you have predictable energy rates, because we have a better grid and we have lower levels, then as a government, we're not going to have to raise property taxes on the other end, because our energy costs as a government are out of control. We're able to maintain our level of expenditures. We're able to reinvest that money in cleaner energy projects, education, housing, public safety, and we don't have to tax. Utility companies tax their customers, governments raise taxes on their residents. Either way, the cost gets passed on to the people who can afford it the least, and so we have to put an end to that vicious cycle and circle.
That's great, Mayor.
So thank you.
Senator King.
Good point.
Thank you, Scott. I'm sorry I missed your testimony. I'm a heat pump owner in Maine, so maybe I can make up for it by that. I was in another hearing.
Getting ready to install heat
Lots of thoughts. Demand side management. The cheapest kilowatt hour is the one you don't use. And as we move toward heat pumps and electric heating, we need to be thinking about weatherization. And that's part of the saving of kilowatt hours. We also need to think about things like time of day pricing, because the expensive electricity is what occurs at the peak. And if we can shave the peaks and spread demand overnight, that's when power is the cheapest. And so that's something that the utilities have resisted. But time of day pricing, I'm old enough to remember when the phone company went to cheaper phone calls after 9 o'clock, and I remember literally sitting and watching my watch and making that phone call. That proves that people will respond to price signals. And why can't we do that with electricity and shave that expensive peak? So those are kind of, and there's no cost to that, to those kinds of things. Secondly, the big hit that's heading for our consumers is the grid. It used to be that transmission and distribution was 30 or 40% of the electric bill. Now it's over 50%, in some cases even higher. And that's going to get worse because everybody's worried about AI and data centers and additional demand. But we have to deal with the incentives that utilities have to build stuff. There is no incentive on a utility to do something like what we call GETS, Grid Enhancing Technologies, and reconductoring first before they build the whole new line and the poles and all that kind of thing. Now, that's really a state issue. it's PUC by PUC when they have to issue a certificate of convenience and necessity. My feeling is they should say, we're not even going to look at your proposal until you show us what you've done in GETS, and then we'll talk about what you have to build, because I think there's a huge opportunity there to avoid what is coming at us, which could be catastrophic increases in terms of additional grid support. We're at the point of this meeting where everything's been said, but not everybody has said it, so I'm going to say a few things again. Solar and wind are the cheapest form of energy today. Onshore wind and solar are 3 cents a kilowatt hour. 3 cents a kilowatt hour. I get a report every week of what the costs of various energy sources is. Solar and wind are always the lowest. And now, of course, the wrap is, well, they're intermittent and you have to have backup. Well, storage has come down in price dramatically over the last literally 5 or 7 years, and it's going to continue to come back, and there are additional storage options. My dream for 25 years is that Hydro-Quebec will be the battery for New England, that you have a renewable storage that could be the backup for wind and solar. And finally, offshore wind. I said 25 years ago, the Gulf of Maine was the Saudi Arabia of wind. The capacity factor for a wind project onshore, which I developed one in Maine some years ago, was about 35 or 40%. The capacity factor offshore is 55%. That's a huge difference. And it's going to, and the wind just blows hard out there, as anybody that lives near the Maine coast can tell you. So there are all kinds of things that can be done, but it needs to be done in a coordinated and thoughtful way. And unfortunately, what's happening now is that the administration is pulling back on all of these things. And I think it's important that the American people know that rising electricity prices aren't inevitable. They can be avoided, but what this administration is doing is facilitating those higher prices rather than ameliorating them. They own the increase on your electric bill because it can be avoided through a whole series of things that takes concerted action. But I think that's so important. Ms. Glover, you've been nodding. You agree with me, I hope, on demand and
I mean, yeah, I think that anything that we can do to help customers, right, not use as much as we're using now, and including our businesses, right? I think
sure.
We should be doing that first. Absolutely.
You know, peak load pricing, demand response, paying companies capacity payment for reducing demand at certain critical times.
Yeah.
And all of those things, there are a lot of low-cost, no-cost efforts that can be made that will significantly lower energy prices. I appreciate all of you coming here. This is it's so important, and it's going to really it's going to hit a lot of our people really hard in the next couple of years, and it can be avoided. That's what's so damn irritating about this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator King. And, you know, it's kind of reflected in this map over here because we see how much energy prices have gone up through the electricity lens. But in places where investments have been made in these solutions, we've been able to keep rates low. I think my current rate through Public Service Company in New Mexico, which serves the Albuquerque area, is like 10.8 cents a kilowatt hour retail. And there are other places where it's double that we have solutions to be able to do this, but it requires, you know, it requires action and leadership, not dogma. So we are going to go to Senator Schatz, and then after Senator Schatz, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto.
I want to thank Senator Heinrich and his staff for convening this. I want to thank all of you for being here. I think we have a generational opportunity that is unique to this moment, and it's sort of the other side of the coin of the consumers feeling pain, and that is that for so long, many of us who are in the climate space have had to make a sort of indirect argument about the need for climate action, even if it's slightly more expensive in the short run. And we know, and by the way, I believe that with every fiber of my being, and I made that argument. And I would continue to make that argument, but we don't need to make that argument anymore. Right now, clean is cheap and cheap is clean, and I think we need to keep it extremely simple as it relates to the affordability question. What I would like to ask from all of you, sort of to go through our leader here, is as we think about the solution set, obviously there are technical pieces of this, and many of these things land at either the FERC or PUCs and PSCs and all the rest of it. But I would like to begin the process of developing a what would we do if we were in charge plan, and I would like to differentiate 2.0 from 1.0 in a couple of ways, and I'm open to additional ideas. The first is, I think we just need to think about speed to market on government services, on government subsidies, because so many of these programs just kind of lumbered their way through various systems and just weren't deployed quickly enough to have the consumer impact, have the economic impact, and therefore the political impact that we had hoped for. And so while we were putting together our IRA and trying to satisfy stakeholders, we ended up creating this labyrinth that we ourselves had to then navigate. And I would like to think about extremely simple, immediately executable things that we can do and fight for on the federal level. Second, I think there's a place for subsidies. LIHEAP is a very good example. Obviously, the ITC and the PTC are sort of bedrock. But I do worry about subsidy being the only solution set, because you're not, in the end, reducing the retail cost of something. I'll give you an example. On Pell Grants, when we increased the Pell Grant subsidy by $500, most and remember, the money gets wired directly from the federal government on behalf of a student right to the treasury of a university. And so most universities, they have their CFO, right? Pell Grant is up $500 in fiscal 26, I'm making this up. And they go, cool, it's now $500 more. And nobody saw a bit of savings. And so subsidies are very critical for people who are in economic trouble, but we also need to try to figure out how we can reduce the actual cost. Otherwise, there's just not enough subsidy in the world to sort of chase after that. And then somebody made the point about heat pumps and LEED certification in construction. I'm all for that. I would just like us to think about incentivizing that as opposed to mandating that, because again, speed to market is like a critical aspect of maintaining political support for what we're doing. So if you can get expedited consideration from state, county, or federal decision makers, that's great. If there's a cash incentive, maybe you get an extra % on your ITC. There's lots of ways to do this. What I don't want to do is satisfy all of our stakeholders by making a bill completely unworkable, except it's workable in terms of getting 51 votes for something, but then suddenly you're left with something that's kind of almost impossible to administer. It sounds like the mayor wants to respond to that.
I absolutely agree, and right now, okay, I absolutely agree, and all of the conversations that we're having on the government side are really reducing barriers and those front end, those soft costs that are associated with development. They're looking at NEPA laws. In New York, we're looking at seeker laws, and these are things that drag projects out for years over years. And so we are looking for ways to absolutely speed that process up, make sure that we're still developing in a safe way, but one that reduces the cost to the developers, because then that will reduce the back-end costs to those who are living in our community. So no, not mandates, but incentives are the way to go, definitely. So thank you so much for that thought, because that is something that we're working on. And then also, I just want to say that I am here with the climate mayors. I'm here with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, National League of Cities, African-American mayors, and where New York has one of the highest energy costs, I serve as the vice president of our New York Conference of Mayors and Municipal Officials. And so we are so happy that you are supporting these efforts. We just came back from Brazil. And when we're sitting there as American mayors on a world stage where they feel that America has lost their direction, they were so pleased to see that so many of us showed up and that we are still, as America, we are all in, and that we are focused, that we have not stepped away from our global responsibility to reduce the use of fossil fuels, that we are still focused on not only the health of our economy, but the health of our residents. These are things that we are always going to keep front of mind, and it is just so helpful to know that on Capitol Hill, we still have partners. Thank you.
Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Martin. I also want to thank you and your staff for pulling us all together, and all the panelists here. Thank you so much for being here. Mayor, I flew back on Tuesday, once I finally got through the storm, with the mayors from my state, and I talk to them regularly. And I'm so pleased to hear you on the conversation, because it's exactly what they're saying. We need to lower costs, we need to address so many issues. Some of that is around these energy costs. Nevada, I'm very proud. As you look at the green here, there's a reason why we're green.
Yeah.
It's because we had all these investments.
Because of the trees.
It's exactly. It's because we invested over the last 10 years in clean energy and the opportunities it brings. And the city of Las Vegas is certified LEED green. The buildings, everything. I mean, everybody has invested. And listen, I will be the first to give credit to Senator Harry Reid. He was the first to pull everybody together 10 years ago in our state and talk about energy and how we need clean energy and the benefits it brings, not just to lowering costs, but to the climate. But it creates jobs, good-paying union jobs, right? And so that's what this is about. There's a ripple effect. I'm interested in your thoughts. We were talking about the tax credits that the Republicans took away. And I know they benefited my state. I'm sure they benefit so many states across the country. The new energy efficient home credit, which gives builders of energy efficient single-family and multifamily home tax credits. The energy efficient home improvement credit that gives or allows eligible taxpayers to claim a percentage of the cost for qualified energy saving home improvements. The residential clean electricity credit, a federal tax incentive covering 30% of the cost of qualified clean energy improvements for a home, such as a rooftop solar and battery storage, which we have in Nevada. Does anybody disagree with bringing any of those credits back? I'm curious.
No?
Good, because today I'm dropping a piece of legislation that does just that, and I'd ask my colleagues to join me. This is proof. If you look at this green, this is why we need these types of things. It is an incentive for us to continue to move forward. In Nevada, we benefit from solar and geothermal. We have a unique geography. That's not everywhere in the state, but they should have the opportunity everywhere in the state, whether you're from Maine or Texas, wherever you are from, to have the opportunity to figure out what makes it work for you. Clean energy, reducing our carbon outcome, right? Carbon footprint is important. So for us to continue this conversation for me, is key to our future in creating jobs. And I want to touch on that because I think we've all talked about the energy credits, but I love Mr. Crowley and Mr. Martinez, thank you, AFL-CIO, IBEW, close to my heart. I was just at a dinner for the AFL-CIO and all of our labor. But here's what I do know that most people don't. I don't care what party you're from. If you have a job to go to, and you know that there's projects in the queue, and that you're going to continue to be able to work, particularly as part of organized labor, that matters. And so can you talk a little bit about the importance of some of these clean energy projects, but most importantly, the impact that this administration is having on slowing those projects down or eliminating some of those projects? Because right now, Secretary Burgum and the Department of Interior is mandating that any new project come up to him for approval. That is having an impact that I see in my state. I'm curious if you guys can both talk about that, what you're seeing.
Sure. I mean, I'll start, Senator. You got to imagine that construction workers are the original gig workers, right? They go from project to project, work for developer to developer. And what the renewable energy sector was providing for the first time, really in generations, was long-term job stability for people for years at a time, which is not common, especially in places like the Northeast where I'm from, where winter shutdowns and summer shutdowns are frequent. So to be able to think about going from a job from January 1st through even December 31st is a luxury for people that work in the construction industry. And I'll never forget one of the things that my union brother, Nick Reynolds, who's a painter that I had referenced earlier, said after the second Revolution wind shutdown. He's like, this was a job I was planning my life around.
Yeah.
This was going to take me for years out. And then 2 days before Christmas, I'm told that I have to compete with 12,000 other human beings in the middle of winter for construction jobs that just aren't there. That's one of the things about this industry that is really transformative. Yes, we're going to have a better energy grid. Yes, we're going to have lower costs. Yes, it's going to be better for the environment. But for working class Rhode Islanders, working class Americans across the country, this was going to be an opportunity to reshape the entire landscape of their work. Just one example of that I think is important for all of you to maybe consider when you're going into the next round of bill negotiations. One of the labor standards that we enacted in Rhode Island was to make sure that there was an apprenticeship standard for any time the state is a market player in the renewable energy sector. Now, why is that important? Because the average age of a construction worker in Rhode Island is 55 years old. And for the first time in 100 years, those white Irish and Italian guys aren't having their sons going into the craft. So they're being replaced by brown, black, and female workers. It would be a shame if the high-quality union wages and benefits disappeared just because the complexion, gender, and nation of origin changed. We can use this renewable energy sector to drive that transition, to make sure that the communities that have been underrepresented in these areas have a foothold and can be able to build that working class, middle class lifestyle that we've taken for granted. So if you could think about those type of standards and how transformative they are for the entire working class, for the entire country, what a difference it could make.
Yeah, and and let me just say, thank you so much for that comment. While I was home last week, I had a roundtable discussion with my building trades, and it's a tough time for them.
Yeah.
It really is. They are, there's the uncertainty, they're concerned about their future for their jobs. They are feeling the pressure just like everyone else. And a lot has to do with the policies of this administration and the concerns that we have all been talking about. It's not just lowering energy costs, it's about creating jobs. It is about a certainty that comes to our working class. That is Nevada. And we are seeing that over and over play out across the country that I think this administration is missing out. Listen, we're talking about bringing manufacturing back to this country, but manufacturing is not increasing here. We've seen that. That's not what's going on with the tariffs and everything that's happening. We have to pivot, we have to readjust this, because if we don't, too many of our hardworking families, individuals who, by the way, who built this country, right, who are on the front lines of building everything that we are utilizing in our communities, they're going to be out of jobs for the reasons that you said. And now you add immigration enforcement on that, it's devastating. So I thank you for being here, and I thank you for the conversation.
And if I could just say.
Mayor.
Thank you so much. It was said that this is a generational, is my mic on? Okay. They said it's a generational opportunity and a unique moment that we're in, and I agree with you totally, Pat, that we're working with Ice Air, a local manufacturer and installer of heat pumps, and we're also working with Environmental Leaders of Color, which is a local organization, and I spoke to them this morning, and we just submitted a grant to the New York State Department of Energy, Environmental Conservation, to create an employment training program and a partnership with our unions to train young people of color ages 18 to 24 in heat pump installation, in solar panel installation and maintenance. And as you said, this is a generational opportunity. So many people no longer have the chance to find careers. These are not just about jobs. People don't want jobs. They want opportunities for careers where they can work with dignity, they can have predictability, they can take care of their families, and they can look at a future. Jumping from job to job, standing on corners, and hustling in the neighborhood to find opportunities to support your family cannot be the American way. We want to create careers. This is an amazing career path for so many.
It is, and let me, and I'll be done here, but you're absolutely right, because I think this gets lost. And let me just give everyone a perfect example. Our working class is our service industry in Nevada. COVID hits, everybody loses a job. Some of our women working in that industry said, enough, I want a job that I know will have a future, so they went to the building trades and started going through the apprenticeship program. Now the administration comes in and says to a women-owned training program, you run afoul of DEI, you're women, and we're not going to fund you anymore. That's how this administration is thinking, and it is devastating to so many, like you have said, who want an opportunity for a job, for their future, to want some certainty, but because they run afoul of some DEI moment, this administration is determining this, that they're going to lose their opportunities and their opportunity for their future and for the kids. That we cannot stand.
And
that's what we have to push
pits
back
Americans against Americans.
Yes,
We have
yes.
to be united. If we're talking about making America great again, it's an America that is great for everyone. We cannot compete in our own country against one another. We are competing on a global stage. And if America is going to be strong, every segment, every population, and it is our diversity that will allow us to be a strong quilt that can cover our country and keep us all safe and warm. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, you are on message today. Thank you. I think we ought to be a country where we can all agree that we believe in cheap, abundant, clean energy, and we believe in jobs that you can actually build a family around. And when we run afoul of those two things, it ought to be an indication that we have lost our way. And I want to thank all of you here today for bringing us back to how we should view ourselves as a nation, leading the world in holding up the middle class and being the energy leader for the world. And we're going to get back to that thanks to all of you. We're going to open things up to questions for the press, and then we're going to wrap. Several of us will be around if you want to pull us aside. Yep. Okay. And once again, thanks to all my colleagues and thanks to all of you for traveling across the country. And if you really want to get in the weeds about why you can only get to 75 or 85, 90% efficiency with a gas water heater, but a heat pump can get to 400%, go talk to Scott Libby afterwards.